In this video, I will analyze Front's Series A, Series B, C and D pitch decks like a VC. Front is a famous software as a service startup. If you are following this course from our website, Relentless.Ventures, you should have already seen these pitch decks. If you haven't, I'm going to go through the important slides one by one. Feel free to pause the video if you want to read a slide. Links to the decks are also available in the video description. Let's start with Front Series A pitch deck. Front raised $10 million in its Series A with this deck in May 2016. One important point before we begin. We all have access to these pitch decks only because Front decided to release them to the public. It's not common for startups to do so. We should all be thankful to Front for releasing their decks so we could learn from them. Let's start. The first slide in the deck emphasizes that hundreds of billions of emails are sent every day in the world, and more than half of them are business emails. Yet, email clients are designed for personal use and not for use by businesses. So, email clients do not have important collaboration features that businesses need. So, Front's vision is to build a new kind of email client that has collaboration features like task assignment, mentions, and analytics that are usually found in ticket management software or help desk software but are absent in email clients. The competitive landscape slide reiterates Front's positioning as a new email client with help desk features, something like a Gmail or Outlook with the features of Zendesk. It is unusual to begin a pitch with your competitive landscape. Maybe Front did so because when VCs were hearing about a new email client in 2016, their first instinct was to ask what was new or different about Front, given that email clients were a 20-year-old technology. So establishing differentiation upfront answered the biggest question early on, which made for a smoother pitch. Read this slide. What is Front saying here? What do they mean by shared inboxes? And what does it have to do with building a new email client? Pause the video if you need to think about this. So, this is the MVP slide, the minimum viable product. This is the slide where Front is telling us what they have built so far against their grand vision of building a better Gmail or Outlook. And what they have built so far is a tool for businesses to manage common email accounts like hello@company or contact@, or support@, and others. Large companies usually have a team of people managing such common email accounts because they get so much email that a single person cannot possibly manage everything on their own. For example, think of a telecom company receiving customer complaint emails on support@telecom company. They may be receiving thousands of emails on this common email every hour. So they will need a team of dozens of people to respond to all the emails. They will also need a tracking system to assign every email to someone in the support team and to track if a response has been sent. And this is what Front has built: software to manage emails sent to common email addresses, or shared inboxes, as Front calls them. Front has given us a masterclass in pitching here. Start with a grand vision and follow it up with concrete progress that you have made. Front could have done the opposite instead. They could have started their pitch by saying that they have built a tool for businesses to manage shared inboxes, and then said that they eventually want to replace Gmail or Outlook. But then, to an investor, it may have looked like Front was chasing a small market and that the grand vision was an afterthought. Also note that Front's vision is colossal. Building a better Gmail or Outlook implies that you are taking head-on two of the largest tech companies in the world on a technology that is 20 years old. But VCs love startups that chase colossal visions, because if the startup succeeds, it will create equivalently colossal returns. And the VC business model requires them to chase colossal returns in every investment they make. Moving on. On this slide, Front has mentioned a few early customers. Notice their focus on teams. This slide has testimonials from some of Front's customers. Notice that at least one customer is already thinking of them as a better replacement for Gmail. Also notice again the focus on teams in MailChimp's testimonial. It gives us a sense that Front is selling to team leaders within large companies so they can use Front's shared inbox for their team. This focus on teams is good strategy because if Front were to ask an entire company to replace their email client, they would probably face a lot of resistance to change. But asking a team leader to use Front just for their team's shared inbox is a much easier sell. This slide presents Front's current economics as of Q1 2016, Jan to March 2016. Let's form a picture of where Front is currently as a business. Can you look at this graph and figure out what is Front's current ARR, its annual recurring revenue? We discussed key SaaS metrics in a previous video of this course. If you need to refresh your memory, you can find that video by tapping on the banner at the top right corner. So what's current ARR? The blue bars on this graph represent MRR, monthly recurring revenue, and current MRR is about $115,000. So ARR is 12 times MRR, about $1.4 million. So a little more than $1 million in ARR at the time when they are trying to raise their Series A of $10 million. Next, what's the ARPU, or average revenue per user per year? Can you estimate the ARPU based on the data on the slide? Again, the blue bars are MRR and the red dots are the number of customers bringing in that MRR. If you look at the graph, Front expects to get $120,000 of MRR on the left axis from 1,000 customers on the right axis. So the average revenue per user is 120,000 divided by 1,000, which is $120 per month or $1,440 per year. Next, what's the current MRR growth rate? How fast is MRR growing? The slide says that Front has grown its MRR 5.4 times in the past 12 months. Let's corroborate that in the graph. We know that current MRR in March 2016 is $115,000. What was the MRR 12 months back in March 2015? From the graph, it looks like the MRR in March 2015 was about $40,000. So MRR has grown by 115 minus 40, which is $75,000 in 12 months, or about $6,000 per month. So Front is adding $6,000 of MRR every month, which is about 5.5% per month. But note that growing from 40K to 100K in 12 months is not 5.4 times in 12 months. It's about 2.75 times. So 5.4 seems to be a typo on this slide. The next slide presents Front's churn metrics. Monthly logo churn seems to be hovering between 1 and 3% in the last 6 months, while gross MRR churn is stable at around 3% per month, which is a bit on the higher side. 2% or less is ideal. However, net MRR churn of minus 3% per month is superb. It means that MRR from existing customers is expanding at the rate of 3% per month or 42% per year, despite the churn in customers. So even if Front were to stop selling to new customers today, its ARR will still grow by 42% every year just because of account expansion at existing customers. This is the product slide. There are two important points that Front is making here. First, that they do not employ any support agents. This means that their product is completely self-serve. They do not offer any human handholding or support, neither in person nor on call. Users must configure and manage the software themselves through user manuals or help articles, much like how users must manage Gmail or Dropbox themselves. Secondly, Front has a single product. They do not have complex product lines. Both these points indicate that Front is building a relatively easy-to-use software product that users can configure themselves. It's not a complex product that users can't configure without help. It's also easy to infer from this that Front will not customize the product to the needs of any one customer. This slide summarizes Front's sales and marketing strategies. Let's start with marketing. There are three ways in which a new user discovers Front. The first is through the content that Front publishes on its own blog. This is their content playbook. Leader on shared inbox implies that their content has started ranking highly in organic search engine results when users search for the term shared inbox. Secondly, they are co-marketing Front with other startups that sell to the same target segment. And thirdly, paid acquisition user economics implies that they have tested ads to acquire users, maybe on Google or Facebook, and that the ad costs are less than the lifetime value of the users acquired through such ads. However, co-marketing and ads are not very important marketing channels for Front right now, because 70% of all customer inquiries they are receiving are coming from their content marketing efforts, which they are also calling organic. Before we move on to sales, think back to the previous video of this course on Buffer. Can you recollect what was Buffer's sales strategy? How many salespeople did Buffer have on its payroll? How many qualified demos were Buffer salespeople doing for customers every month? If you recollect, Buffer did not present any sales metrics in their deck. Why? The answer to the first question is zero. Buffer had zero salespeople employed. Buffer's product was self-serve and their sales was also self-serve. Buffer did not provide manual help to its customers to buy their software. They did not have any sales to present sales metrics. This is different for Front. Front's product is self-serve, but their sales is not. Customers visit Front's website and leave their contact number with them if they are interested in buying Front. Then an SDR, a sales development representative, calls them, understands their needs, provides a product demo, and hands over the account to an AE, an account executive, whose job is to finally close the deal. This SDR and AE sales process is commonplace in the SaaS world. Finally, from all the data that you have seen about Front so far, can you deduce how many AEs does Front employ right now? How many account executives are part of Front's team right now? 2 slides ago, we discussed Front's MRR growth rate and concluded that they are adding about $6,000 of MRR every month, which is $72,000 of ARR added every month. This slide tells us that Front is adding $36,000 of ARR per month per AE. This means that Front has 2 AEs right now, each adding $36,000 of ARR every month. Moving on. This slide presents Front's cohort analysis. We covered cohort analysis in our review of key SaaS metrics. It shows the MRR retained from every cohort of customers and includes the impact of account expansion, contraction, churn, as well as resurrection. Front's data shows consistent account expansion across every monthly cohort. Customers are buying more and more seats from Front every month as product usage increases to include more people within a team and more teams within a company. On average, every customer is expanding usage within a year to pay 150% of their starting amount. Front is calling it their land and expand strategy. Read this slide. Front had raised its seed round of $3.1 million 18 months ago. Of these $3.1 million, they have $1.8 million still left in the bank. They have reached an ARR of $1.4 million and are burning just $90,000 per month right now. And the rate at which they are growing ARR, they expect that they will turn profitable in just 5 more months. With this data, can you calculate how many months of runway they have left, assuming that their monthly burn does not decrease but remains constant? If their monthly burn remains constant at $90,000, with $1.8 million left in the bank, they have a runway of 20 months. But they are projecting that they will be profitable within 5 months. So they will comfortably reach profitability and will have a lot of cash left over, which will only increase after they become profitable. Then why are they raising more money? We covered this extensively in the first course of this specialization. If Front reaches profitability, it will not need to use any of its cash to cover losses. So any capital that it raises will sit idle in its bank account as long as Front remains profitable. So why is Front raising money when it is about to be profitable? Because Front does not plan to remain profitable for long. Their plan is to raise their Series A and increase their expenses drastically. Hire more people to build their product, hire more salespeople, spend more in marketing, etc. So they can grow even faster and become even more profitable later. These increased expenses will make Front loss-making again. And Front will cover these future losses with the capital it is raising now. If you have seen my Cash Accounting 101 video from course 1 earlier, this should be intuitive. If you haven't, you can find it by tapping on the banner at the top right corner. Look at these slides. This is the team slide. This is Front's product roadmap. Notice that their plan is to soon start building enterprise features. These are features that small businesses do not need, but large businesses or enterprises definitely need. Things like single sign-on, so employees can use their existing corporate ID and password to log in into Front as well. Service level agreements, so enterprises can get uptime and performance guarantees from Front. Custom rights, which is probably configurable access management, and advanced reporting, which is probably the ability to configure reports. This tells us that Front soon plans to target large customers and is planning to add all the complex features to its product that large customers need. Let's now look at Front Series B deck. Front raised $66 million in its Series B in January 2018 with this deck. So this deck was made 2 years after the Series A deck. Let's see how Front has evolved over these 2 years. Again, remember that we have access to these decks only because Front released them to the public. So we are seeing only what Front has released. The first few slides are about Front's value proposition and how they have built a new email client that started with shared email and is now evolving to replace the standard email client at companies so employees could collaborate better. Front now has 2,300 customers across diverse industries, from technology, media, travel to logistics. Front is also being used by diverse departments within a company, from customer support to product. This diversity of industries is a hallmark of horizontal SaaS. Read this slide. Can you calculate what's Front's ARR right now? Take some time. Pause the video if you have to. In March 2016, at Series A, Front's ARR was $1.4 million. What's Front's ARR right now? Read this. What's Front's churn right now? At Series A, churn was -3% per month. What's the churn right now? See this. Can you calculate how fast is Front growing right now? At Series A, MRR growth rate was 5.5% per month. What's the growth rate right now? You can't calculate the ARR, churn and growth rate from these graphs because Front has removed the data from this deck before releasing it. There are no X and Y axes. The axes and the data points have been scrubbed. Front had released this data at Series A but has now scrubbed this data. This slide finally shows an X and a Y axis. We learn that Front now has 12 AEs. At Series A, Front had 2 AEs, so they have added 10 more AEs in these 2 years. This slide tells us that Front has been focusing on large deals and enterprise customers. Front started closing large deals in Q3 2016, about 6 months after its Series A. This is the marketing slide, and again we do not have the Y-axis. What we can tell from this slide is that Front is now spending a lot more on paid marketing than it was doing at Series A, when most leads were being generated by Front's content marketing playbook. Even 1 year after Series A, in Q1 2017, paid marketing was small, but it has grown since then. An important metric to note here is Front's LTV by CAC ratio. This must be at least 3 to have a healthy business. Front's LTV by CAC was a little less than ideal in the first 2 quarters of 2017, but has improved in Q3. Net retention is still at 150% within 1 year, which means that on average, every customer is expanding usage within a year to pay 150% of their starting amount. So their land and expand strategy is intact. Another interesting point on this slide is about ACV doubling between Q2 2016 and now. ACV is annual contract value, which is the same thing as annual ARPU, average revenue per user. Now, we know from the Series A deck that ARPU in Q1 2016 was $1,440. So assuming ARPU did not change too much between Q1 and Q2 of 2016, this means that the ARPU now has doubled to $2,880 per year. This is incredible. SaaS companies find it really hard to increase ARPU. This is evidence that Front's strategy to focus on large deals and enterprise customers is paying off. Now that we know what the current ARPU is, can we estimate Front's current ARR? In an earlier slide of the Series B deck, we learned that Front has 2,300 customers right now. Multiplying with ARPU of $2,880, we get ARR of $6.6 million now at Series B. Look at this final Series B slide. Front has $7 million left in its bank account. It has a runway of 18 months assuming constant burn, and it expects to be profitable within 10 months. So why is Front raising more money now? It has $7 million left over from the last round and profitability is near. Why raise money then? Again, because profit is a choice. They can continue on their current trajectory and become profitable in 10 months, or they can raise more capital now, increase expenses to grow even faster, cover the resulting losses with their capital, and target even more profitability later. Let's now look at Front's Series C deck. Front raised $59 million in its Series C in January 2020 with this deck. So this deck was made 2 years after the Series B deck that we just saw. Let's now see how Front has evolved over the 2 years since Series B. The first 6 slides again articulate Front's value proposition. Take a quick look. Notice that as Front has grown, its value proposition has become broader. At Series A, it was very specific, building a better email client for businesses. Now it is about acting as a conductor for your team. This is an indication that Front has by now added many features that fall outside the purview of an email client for businesses. Therefore, they are now articulating their vision much more broadly than what they were doing at Series A. Front has 5,500 customers now. They had 2,300 customers at Series B. Net retention was 150% at Series B. It is 137% now. The y-axis on these graphs has again been scrubbed. But can you anyway estimate what's Front's ARR right now in Q3 2019? Pause here if you want to think about it. It's quite tenuous, but it's the best that I can do. Look at the leftmost graph. We know from the Series A deck that this orange bar for Q1 2016 represents $1.4 million in ARR. And because the first horizontal line is about 7 times higher than the orange bar, the first line is probably the $10 million line. The second line is the $20 million line, and so on. So this last bar for Q3 2019 is roughly at $35 million. Next, can you estimate what's Front's ARPU right now? The $35 million of ARR is coming from 5,500 customers. So the ARPU is 35 million divided by 5,500, which is about $6,400 per year. So ARPU seems to have more than doubled since Series B, when it was about $2,900. This is incredible. SaaS companies find it very tough to increase their ARPU, but Front has doubled its ARPU twice in 4 years, from $1,400 at Series A to $6,400 now. Front's strategy of focusing on large customers and large deals is clearly working. Next, can you estimate how many AEs does Front have right now? Front added $5 million in ARR in the last quarter, which is $1.67 million of ARR added every month. Now, we do not know how much new ARR every AE is bringing in every month on average. But if we assume that the new ARR added per month per AE has not changed since Series A and is still at 36,000 per month per AE, then Front currently employs 1.67 million divided by 36,000, which is 46 AEs. Front had 12 AEs at the time of Series B, so the sales team has grown quite a bit over the past 2 years. Look at this slide. It shows Front's buyer personas. These are the typical profiles of people who are buying Front's product. There's a huge change in the buyer persona since Series A. Can you spot the change? At Series A, Front's typical buyer was a team lead who bought Front for their team. Their current buyer is a vice president, a director, or a department head who is now buying Front for their entire department. So it's not just that the number of AEs have increased in Series A. The job of the AE has also changed drastically. Selling to a team lead for a few seats is very different from selling to a department head for a much larger number of seats. The buyer is going to need a lot more data on effectiveness of the product before they make the decision to buy. The buyer will also need a lot more time and handholding. Selling to a vice president is an entirely different skill set than selling to a team lead. On this slide, focus on the rightmost graph. It breaks down Front's current sales strategy for large deals. Front has 2 sales strategies right now, inbound and outbound. Inbound implies calling those customers who have already visited the website and requested a call back, whereas outbound implies cold outreach, either cold calling or cold emails or even outreach through a reference. At Series A, 70% of Front's potential customers were discovering them through their blog, and 100% of Front's sales efforts were focused on inbound leads. Even till Series B, Front did not do outbound sales. They began outbound in Q4 2018 after their Series B. The important point to understand here is that large deals usually need outbound sales. Because if the buyer is a VP or a CXO of a company, for example, it is unlikely that they will discover you through a blog and leave their contact details on your website. It is much more likely that you will reach out to the VP or CXO through a reference and set up a meeting. This is the final slide in the Series C deck. Again, most data has been scrubbed, but look at the black column on the left. Front has presented their market size estimate here, $5.5 billion every year. This is a huge market. What's Front's market penetration right now? Out of this $5.5 billion market, how much has Front penetrated? We estimated from this deck that Front's current ARR is $35 million. So their market penetration is 35 million divided by 5.5 billion, which is just 0.6%. So Front has immense headroom to grow and become a much larger company. One more thing, and this goes back to the point on competition that I made in the VC Loves Game framework. If you were thinking of starting a collaboration software startup in an adjacent space to Front, this should be incredibly encouraging for you. If Front has not penetrated even 1% of the market, it implies that there is a huge swath of opportunity that you can target without needing to compete with Front. This brings us to the end of the Series C deck, and I have an important question for you. Why did Front scrub its Series B and C decks but did not scrub its Series A deck before releasing it publicly? They released all the data from their Series A deck, released some from their Series B deck, and released very little from their Series C deck. Why? Note that the VCs they pitched to would have received all the data in these decks and even more data from their MIS statements, business projections, due diligence requests, and much more. The data has been scrubbed only before the public release of these decks. So why? Why did they scrub the data from their later decks? One answer I get from my MBA students is that Front made an enthusiastic mistake by releasing their data at Series A when they were a young startup and subsequently corrected their mistake. No, that's not right. Front's decision to release the data was strategic, very important, and right. Most of my students feel that they have scrubbed the data because of competitive threat. Releasing the data could have equipped the competition. The norm for most companies in the world is to remain secretive until they establish strong moats, strong network effects, strong brands, and only then they IPO and release all information to the public. But Front has acted contrary to the norm. They were open at Series A when they were small, when their moats were weaker, when their product was fledgling, and then they became secretive when they had raised tens of millions of dollars, when their product had matured, when their moats had strengthened. Why? So competitive threat cannot be the reason, because Front had more to fear when they were smaller, so they should have been more secretive when they were smaller. No, something else has happened. Something else has changed. Some students answer that VCs may have advised Front to be secretive. Venture capital is a world of secrets after all. But this doesn't add up either. It's not like VCs got involved with Front for the first time at Series A. Front had already raised their seed round of $3.1 million from a VC 18 months before they raised their Series A and released their deck. Some students feel that releasing the data attracts customers. But if this were true, why stop releasing the data now? Don't they need more customers now? One more thing. In a few years, if Front continues its growth, it will be time for it to IPO. And at that time, Front will anyway have to release tons of data to the public. So why is Front more secretive now, nearer to its IPO than it was at Series A? Next, Front raised their Series D of $65 million in June 2022, 2.5 years after their Series C. Let's look at their Series D deck and see if they are becoming more open as they grow larger and approach an IPO, or are they continuing to become more secretive as they grow larger? Once again, the ARR and growth numbers have been scrubbed. Front is now projecting an even larger market size of $13 billion. Net retention has worsened a little bit from 137% to 130%. Let's quickly look at the next few slides and try to get a sense of Front's scale right now. Feel free to pause the video if you need. This looks like the first performance slide, but this data does not tell us anything about ARR, ARR growth rate, ARPU, size of their sales team, churn metrics, retention cohort, or current sales and marketing strategies. We were able to infer these earlier, but can't do any of that now, apart from the fact that Front seems to be closing even larger deals now. Let's look at the next few slides and see if we can infer more from them. And the deck is over. What's the ARR? We don't know. ARPU? We don't know. How many AEs at Front right now? No idea. Earlier, Front had also disclosed how much cash they had left, their burn rate, runway, and capital efficiency. All of that has been scrubbed. Almost nothing has been shared. So I'm back to my earlier question. Why is Front more secretive now when it's larger, but was more open when it was smaller? This is the second key question of this course. The first key question for the course was, why is Buffer such a weird company? And you know what's curious? The answer to both the key questions is the same. It's the same answer. So think about both these questions. Why? Isn't it strange? I will give you the answer to both the questions after we have analyzed Viva's pitch deck, which is our next video. Hey there, I'm KJ Saxena, founder of Relentless VC. The video you just watched is part of the Venture Capital and Entrepreneurship Specialization, which is available absolutely for free on relentless.ventures. Go check it out. If you're a tech startup founder and want to raise money from us, you should apply on our website. Lastly, if you like this video, do subscribe and share it with your friends.